Krystal, what are you taking a look at?
At this point, we do actually know a lot of the contours of the events leading up to the Mar-a-Lago raid and are beginning to get a feel for the type of documents Trump retained, even after he and at least his lawyers claimed he had handed everything over. We know from the inventory of the search and from Trump's own statements that he held on to some highly classified material. After all, Trump himself is no longer even arguing that the feds didn't find anything, switching from suggesting that material was planted by the FBI to arguing that whatever documents he did have was totally cool and fine because everyone, quote, takes their work home from time to time. I mean, who among us hasn't stored nuclear secrets in their private beach resort, am I right? And then gone ahead and lied to the FBI about it. Highly relatable situation. Now, no one knows exactly what's going to happen now, whether Trump will be indicted for this or for other alleged crimes, whether this latest chapter will be a political death knell or ultimately some kind of political resuscitation. But we are starting to get the outlines of two competing theories as to why he might have held onto these documents, concealing them, even after it was really clear that the feds actually meant business. Now, Trump's actions, just in general, are usually motivated by one of two things: reckless impulsivity or shameless cash grabs. That's how he navigates the world. Any grand schemes ascribed to Trump generally fall apart under scrutiny, Russiagate being the perfect example. He is not playing 5D chess. He is just responding at all times to the most base of human instincts. And accordingly, two relatively plausible theories of Trump and the docs have emerged. One based on the idea that he is a narcissistic Packrat, and the other based on the idea that he saw billions in profits from potentially selling government secrets. So let's consider them both in turn. NBC News has the most complete accounting of the narcissist Packrat theory. In their telling, according to advisors, confidants, and former aides, Trump is a, quote, Packrat who tends to leave the actual packing to underlings. At the end of the day, they clear his desk of paperwork, notes, scribbles newspaper clippings, printed out emails, the new tree alignment for a golf course, the new grill for Mar-a-Lago, and then the contents are placed in a box on the floor. When filled, the boxes are removed by an aide and stored elsewhere. When he travels, an aide sometimes brings boxes along. This longtime practice then collided with his Stop the Steal conspiracies in what turns out to be a catastrophic fashion. Trump would not allow anyone to pack up the White House because he wouldn't admit that he had actually lost. This led to a frantic and chaotic exit where those boxes filled with God knows what notes and documents he had grabbed and retained throughout his term were all packed up and sent wholesale down to Mar-a-Lago. The logical conclusion of this theory is that he either didn't want to give up the documents when the Fed started asking because he and his ego were too attached to them, and so he lied about what he still had, or he just was too lazy to actually even know what he still had, and so had his lawyers claim they'd given up all the documents with classified markings out of sheer disorganization and incompetence and laziness. Accidentally concealing nuclear secrets seems like a bit of a stretch, but it is certainly possible. Now, Trump-Russia has never been the real story, though, of grift and corruption for Trump. It's always been Trump and the Saudis. Trump and the Saudis are a match made in heaven. They share an amoral transactional view of the world, justifying absolutely anything in the name of money and power. They even share a gaudy gold and marble style aesthetic. And Trump's first overseas trip was to Saudi Arabia. Saudis were big spenders at Trump Hotel while he was in office. A single Saudi lobbyist racked up hundreds of thousands of dollars in Trump hotel tabs. Trump's New York hotel saw a massive revenue bump from Saudi spending when MBS came to town. And it just so happened that Trump gave the country everything they wanted while he was in office, backing their devastating war in Yemen, covering for the Crown Prince after he had his goons dismember journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Post-presidency, Trump and his family have only become more financially entangled with the Saudis. Jared Kushner landed a $2 billion investment in his investment fund from the Saudis. The details of that are actually extremely sketchy. The initial review board in that country rejected the Kushner investment before being ultimately overruled by the full board, which happened to be led by Crown Prince MBS himself. Now, the Saudi money is nearly the entirety of what Kushner has raised into his fund thus far and was given at better terms than what former Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin was able to secure. That in spite of the fact that, unlike Kushner, Mnuchin at least has an actual track record of success in a similar space. Now, Trump himself is getting a massive payday from his partnership with Live Golf from Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Golf League upstart that is luring players away from the PGA Tour with big checks. We don't know exactly how much, but given how much money they are throwing around in general, speculation is Trump is getting perhaps $100 million to host tournaments for that league. So, the Trump-Saudi financial connections and entanglements are very real, they're massive, they're well documented. But what does any of this have to do with classified documents, including some potentially containing nuclear secrets? Well, it just so happens the Saudis have a long-standing interest in developing their own nuclear program and have spent millions on lobbyists to try to achieve those aims. As Jed Luggin points out, whistleblowers under the Trump administration actually raised concerns about Trump officials attempting to transfer nuclear secrets to the Saudis. The kingdom has made no secret of its ambitions to start a civilian nuclear program, but they have also refused to agree to normal non-proliferation standards. Those standards are designed to prevent countries from moving from civilian use into bomb production. So, the Saudis have a clear interest in some of the classified info regarding our own nuclear capabilities and also that of our allies like Israel. You don't need a P-tape and elaborate schemes of useful idiots or secret computer servers and multi-decade intelligence assets to understand the Trump-Saudi relationship. It's about mutual self-interest and it's about money. It's very simple and it's very direct. Now listen, personally, I tend to still lean towards the dumbest possible explanation being the correct one. But the Saudi-Trump theory does have a few things going for it. Namely, it provides an explanation for why, even after the FBI came calling, and even after they issued a subpoena, Trump continued to conceal information about nuclear secrets and special access programs. On the other hand, it seems less plausible to imagine that as his aides were rushing in chaotic fashion to pack up the White House, that anyone would have had the foresight to purloin these specific documents that would have held the highest possible dollar value for the Saudis. I guess there is a third possibility here as well, a sort of mesh of the two, that Trump ended up with the documents by accident because he's a narcissistic Packrat, but then kept them and lied about them because he realized they had some financial value to the Saudis, bumbling into selling out his country. Listen, we may ultimately never know exactly how it all unfolded and why, and in terms of his legal jeopardy, it might not ultimately even matter. Because even the most exonerating possible narrative here, that Trump is just a bumbling narcissist Packrat, it doesn't actually get him off the hook legally. The statutes he's being investigated under, as we covered before, they don't require him to sell secrets to the Saudis. As Ken Klippenstein notes, quote, prosecution under the Espionage Act doesn't require proof of espionage, just that the subject willfully retains classified material and fails to deliver it upon official request. And even if you buy the rather novel legal theories conservatives are now offering that documents can be declassified at any time in a president's mind without even telling anyone, the criminal statutes that he's being investigated under don't necessarily require that the documents were classified in order for him to be in violation of the law. As far as the legal requirement that he be in willful violation of the law, the inaccurate statement from his lawyer that everything had been turned over goes a long way towards proving that. We'll see. Now, Trump's greatest hope at this point might be that the DOJ just doesn't have the stones to charge the case, in spite of the fact that I think it's pretty clear at this point, if this was any other private citizen, they would build the jail on top of them. In other words, I'd like to see old Donnie wriggle his way out of this jam, Sagar. Famous last words. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.